How am I far right? How am I far right?
Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Like what? Give me an example. Give me an example.
You're talking about boats. You're talking about asylum seekers.
Oh, so I'm talking about something makes me far right. No, not it. No. It's not gassing the Jews. It's talking about things negatively, right?
No, not negatively. But if you talk about things which are racist, which are untrue,
what's racist?
Which is disinformation, victimising asylum seekers.
I'm not victimising them. I'm saying they're not asylum seekers.
So do you think?
How am I far right? How am I far right?
Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Good God. I mean, if that doesn't give you a sign of what the Labour Party is direction they're heading in, I don't know what will. But let's bring James in, and James can actually tell us what it's all about. One of our viewers says Norwich, which obviously he is the MP for Norwich. But we'll hear from James now. Hello, James.
Hello.
Can you hear us? You can hear us.
Hi,
Good.
James.
I got it to work. Woohoo! That's a start. James, give us
thank you for having me on, guys.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us. Give us the skinny on what this is and actually tell us what bloody university you're at. That would be a start.
So I used to attend the University of Wales Trinity St David's in Swansea.
Okay, so
That's
I was
quite
way
helpful.
off. Yeah, it is actually.
Well, I'm Welsh, so I've only moved up to England recently. So I spent most of my time in Wales, but I was there for 2 years until I was kicked out.
Right, wow, okay. Gosh, there's a story there.
Tell us what you did. What did you get kicked out for?
So back when I was in university is when I first founded Students Against Tyranny. It was actually just before my first year is when I founded it. And we managed to get
That's
a hold
Students
of...
Against Tyranny for people that want to find it, right? Yeah, Students Against Tyranny.
Yeah, we're now on Twitter as well. We set up an account recently, so you can find us on there. So I set up that just before going to university, and I've recently managed to get all of the emails between faculty about myself while I was there, and they would send emails to each other about my latest antics when I got arrested in Cardiff, for example, for protesting a child sweetie shop that was selling adult paraphernalia out in the open for children to grab. Right, so I got arrested. So I removed them all off the shelves and we got arrested for criminal damage. And when I organised protests in Swansea and places like that, and so they'd all be talking about it and trying to find a kind of a reason to kick me out. And interestingly, when I organised a protest in Swansea about 15-minute cities, a lot of the counter protesters lived in the same halls as me. They went to the same university as me. They sat in the same classes as me. Didn't say a word to me in person, but then instantly they're in a big group and they're all chanting Nazi. You know, it's the same old stuff. Mob mentality, isn't it? But ultimately, I was kicked out for a series of things, and what was it for? So I think the main thing was the Oxford protest. So if anyone remembers, in Oxford, they did a, what was it? They did a protest about 15-minute cities. Antifa lied. Antifa lied and claimed I organised it. I didn't organise it. I had no involvement in it. I just went up there with the organisers to do a bit of leafleting. So they claimed I organised that. The uni didn't like that. They didn't like a lot of the things I did. And so they kind of put it down to missing modules, but the modules weren't missing. And I was given wrong deadlines and stuff like that. Something that I proved online. So, yeah, it was basically a kind of collection of things. I think one of the things...
But you think it's ideologically motivated, crucially, right?
Absolutely. And I used to expose what was being taught. So one of the things was we were brought up, and I know a lot of people don't like us talking about the EDL, that's fine. But they brought up a picture on the screen of a Hindu woman standing up to a member of the EDL. And I explained to the teacher, they're not racist, right? And I took a 2-second video clip where I didn't actually show anyone's faces, didn't show anyone speaking or anything, just showed what was on the screen. And for that, they pulled me into a disciplinary meeting, and I was told that I'm not allowed to question the curriculum in this meeting. I was also not allowed to bring any representation to defend me. I was told to bring someone from the student union. The student union fund protests against me. How is that fair representation?
Yeah.
So ultimately now I've been kicked out, and the university has actually lied about when I was kicked out. They're saying I was kicked out a full term before I was actually kicked out. And so now Student Loans Company is saying I owe them £5,000 and they've got debt collection agencies ringing me. Yeah.
Good God. Right. So it's all kicked off. But tell us how did you, because clearly you are an activist, but tell us how you came to be in, I assume this clip is from Norwich, right? Because he is the MP there. Yeah. So this is Clive Lewis, and I'll just bring that back up for those that didn't see it. I'll play it one more time if you don't mind, because it is a short clip, just for those that are just joining.
How am I far right? How am I far right?
Because of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Like
some
what?
Of the
Give me an
stuff
example. Give me an example.
You're talking about boats. You're talking about asylum seekers.
Oh, so I'm talking about something makes me far right. Got it? No, it's not gassing the Jews. It's talking about things negatively, right?
No, not negatively. But if you talk about things which are racist, which are untrue,
what's racist?
Which are disinformation, victimising asylum seekers.
I'm not victimising them. I'm saying they're not asylum seekers. How am I?
So, how did you come to actually be there to bump into this lovely individual? And actually, what was the sort of opening salvo? How did you approach him?
So there's a lot of context that needs to go with this, and I think the main thing is that for the past 5 months, this will be our 5th one now, we've been organising, Students Against Tyranny have been organising a series of demonstrations in Norwich. So at the University of East Anglia, which is one of the most woke, one of the most wokest universities in the UK. It's not that restrictive around free speech, but they're extremely woke, yeah. And they've got a sports park facility, right, with a swimming pool. And there was an incident about 2 years ago where a woman walked into the female changing rooms and saw a naked man twice. She brought these concerns to staff, who then told it would be discriminatory to question the naked male, right? Now, I've spoken to people since. This naked individual is spotted at the sports park in the female changing facilities at least once every couple of weeks, right? So it's a regular occurrence. Once there was a bit of uproar about this, the sports park released a statement where they claimed that, well, they didn't actually address anyone's questions or concerns. They didn't mention the naked male. They didn't mention that staff branded it as discriminatory. They didn't mention their position on transgenders using and switching and changing facilities as they please, right? So they didn't answer anything. So I thought, you know what, enough is enough. I've been doing protests all over the country at different universities, you know, from Manchester to Swansea, etc. And I wanted to organise a protest in Norwich, but I didn't want to just organise one. I wanted to keep it going, and potentially we can create some change here, because I do know that from first-hand experience that direct action works. So we've organised, this will be our 5th one this month on 14th of September. We've organised 4 so far, 1 more to come, protests at the University of East Anglia. We've done 2 on the actual campus, and we've done the rest, and we're doing this one in Norwich City, because we want to wake people up to it. We want to let people know what's going on. We want to get the numbers, and then we want to bring it to the sports park, show them that the locals are not happy with this, and the locals aren't happy with this, right? So Clive Lewis attended the counter-protest to us. This was at the last demonstration. He attended the counter-protest.
And this is all about the trans issue in the changing rooms, or is it about more broader issues?
Immigration, yeah.
Funny thing is, so we Students Against Tyranny, we haven't done many protests around immigration. We've talked about it a lot, but we've tried to steer clear of doing protests around that. We do that in our own individual capacity. That protest there that we organised had nothing to do with immigration. And this is what's so interesting about it, right? So what was it? So he attended the last counter-protest. He was online on Twitter calling us all far-right and fascist, you know, the same old tactics that they always use to silence opposition, right? And they all claimed in their poster that this was about being that our protest was about being anti-immigration. They claimed, everyone remembers the Southport riots, the riots that ripped through Sunderland, Hartlepool, which never should have happened, right? You can understand people's anger, but they never should have happened. Those they claimed that that was our aim, was to cause a massive riot and set fire to the mosques. I don't know where they got that from, and Clive Lewis was part of that. He was kind of stirring the same pot, saying that we were there to cause division, to cause violence, and that we were far right. Yeah. So I've ambushed him once before. This was the second time we wanted to do it. And this is the thing. They were holding a public meeting about our demonstration, but we weren't invited. So they had this public meeting where they said everybody's welcome. This was Stand Up to Racism and Socialist Workers' Party. Everyone is welcome. So we turned up to go in, and we wanted to hear what they were saying. We were told we're not allowed in, and then we bumped into Clive Lewis. And we started a little conversation with him. It was actually Glenn who first started debating him, and asking him why he thinks we're all far right. So like I've seen people on, it was on GB News. There was 2 individuals who said that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. They said, what was it they said? That we were trying to do it for clicks and likes and stuff like that. No, we wanted to doorstep him, to put pressure on him, and to respond to the allegations that he's spreading online that we're far right, when that is not the truth at all.
Do they accuse you, James, of being with the EDL, which of course hasn't existed since 2015? I hear that quite a lot.
Not this time. They're saying I'm associated with EDL.
Right.
Because that's quite a quick shutdown tactic, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. So then I guess, how did you feel after his response there, saying that you are far right? How would you respond to that now, were he here today?
It reminds me of the gender thing quite a lot, because with the gender thing, they can't define what a woman is. And it seems they struggle these days to define what far right was. Back in the day, real Nazis, real skinheads, you would be running the other way down the street. You would be running, right? Nazis are a very small minority in this country, but they consider 99% of the UK Nazis, right? Like, I'll give you an example. I think it's 6 in 10 people in Britain right now want the rate of immigration to be slowed down or lowered. Yeah. 6 in 10. According to his definition that he just gave there, that means 60% of the UK are Nazis.
So, Alex,
there's been a lot of polling coming out lately showing that immigration is now the number one topic in the UK. It's the number one concern for most people, and it's a fair concern. I mean, Clive Lewis is definitely more on the left of the Labour Party. Have you received any support at all from anybody on the left for anything, any part of your protest or your right to protest, or anything from the university at all in that respect?
No, previously we've had a lot of women who would consider themselves left-wing, who believe in climate change and that kind of stuff, who are the feminists, and they do kind of agree with us on this issue, which is good. But the problem is they don't want to publicly support us, because even if they believe in climate change and all the other stuff that typically categorizes them as left-wing, if they support us on this one issue, they are immediately Nazis. Yeah. And they're kind of tarnished by this guilt. Guilt by association?
Well, indeed, yeah. But Chloe, I'm wondering, because you've spoken about this in the past, what James says about the bias that is undoubtedly present in these institutions, the university and educational establishment. It strikes me that actually to have the views of, as James says, quite rightly, 6 in 10 people in the country, for that to be beyond the pale, I mean, it doesn't speak very highly of the direction our education system's going in, does it?
No, I mean, our education system is in a complete bind at the moment. I mean, question, what is the purpose of universities? The purpose of universities is that you go there to learn, to debate with people, to explore ideas, and specifically to explore ideas that you disagree with, become better debaters, become better at critical thinking, and all the rest of it. And the way I see it going at the moment is that the majority of students that go into universities come out being worse at those skills than when they started. So it's like, well, what is the point anymore? They are just breeding grounds for woke ideology, where people become it seems as though completely detached from the reality of how normal people in this country think. They live in this left-wing bubble where they think that anyone who is concerned about immigration is a Nazi, when the reality is that most people in the country, most normal people who are not extreme and have perfectly reasonable grievances and concerns, they do think that immigration is a problem that we need to tackle. And so it just makes their rhetoric very divisive and detached from reality, and it makes it more difficult for them to when they re-enter the real world, to engage in proper debate with people. And I think university campuses are a very hostile place for people on the right to be, because when you're an ordinary individual at home, okay, someone might come after you on Facebook or on Twitter, or X as we call it now, whatever, if they disagree with you. But when you're at university and everybody lives super in close proximity to each other, you are surrounded in the building that you live in and in, the 1 mile radius around you by people who hate you, right? That then becomes a personal safety risk to you, knowing that there are tons of people around you who think that you are a Nazi, who, you might fear are going to harm you in some way, or, at least come and start a really scary confrontation with you in the street. So, yeah, I think it's a horrendous direction our universities are going in. I was wondering, before you go, James, if you could talk about, you mentioned to me that there was an event that the UEA organised for year 10s that white children were not allowed to attend.
Is that the University East Anglia? Right, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I did want to kind of touch on a point that you said there about the education
Go for it.
system. There's a lot of things that are going on in the education system, and people aren't as aware about what, like, the kind of ins and outs of it. So everyone who's watching, I just want to kind of encourage you and nudge you to kind of research some of these topics, right? So everyone's hearing about decolonization. Of course, that's a really important topic, but there's a few other things as well. So you've got the Race Equality Charter and you've got the Athena Swan Charter. The Race Equality Charter, like the Athena Swan Charter, the Athena Swan Charter just focused on gender, right? Rewards universities who perpetuate a racial or gender kind of neutral environment, right? So that's one thing. And also as well, Confucius Institutes, which are tied with the Chinese Communist Party and the United Front Work Department, which are now taking over our British academia. And then you've also got universities like the University of Edinburgh, which is funded by the People's Liberation Army, while they're decolonising Robert Louis Stevenson for perpetuating a few colonial stereotypes. Seems like they're a bit of a hypocrite there. But there's quite a few things to research there. So I highly recommend just look into the education system. It's an absolute mess at the moment and needs a complete overhaul. In regards to the University of East Anglia, right? So they did an event for year 10s called Uni Unlocked. And it's basically an event for year 10s to experience kind of a taster of student life. And they would do this by staying in student flats of other year 10s, participating in sports clubs and society taster sessions, and just getting an overall kind of feeling of what it's going to be like when they join university, right? It's kind of like a taster session. And if you go on their website, Uni Unlocked, have a look at the eligibility criteria. It stipulates every race, every ethnicity is welcome, apart from white people. So if you're a white year 10, you're not welcome at this event for year 10s, right? And obviously they're going to claim that this is like female-only engineering clubs where they're trying to boost diversity uptake in a particular profession. It's a load of nonsense, because if you look at the statistics, the majority white kids are entering into university at a disproportionately lower rate than every other ethnicity, especially those from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. So we don't need to support disadvantaged groups. If we do, it's actually white kids. But no, they're being told white kids aren't allowed to attend this event. There's no excuse for it other than clear racism, clear anti-white hatred. And so they're doing this at the UEA with the Uni Unlocked event, anti-white discrimination, and then they're also doing allowing men into the female changing rooms. This isn't just happening at the UEA, it's happening at every university across the UK. Look at the University of Liverpool. The University of Liverpool is now teaching that whiteness and heterosexuality are the problem. That's what the history departments are teaching. So yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it?
One of our comments says, actually, I don't identify as white anymore. So that's Phil on YouTube's way of getting around all of this. But Eunice, on that point that James mentioned there firstly, if you've got any comments on what Clive Lewis had to say and his response to James, but secondly, the question around, because the Labour Party actually dropped the Tory free speech bill, which was supposed to protect speech on university campuses, and they dropped it allegedly because of the fact that they knew that it would be a sore point for the Chinese communists. Right. So we're starting to see that actually come into the fore. And I assume, Eunice, also, it would be a sticking point, dare I say, for the Iranian regime too.
No, 100%. And I agree with everything that your guest said, because universities, as Chloe mentioned before, used to be the hub for free thinking and for debate. And now what we have is an indoctrination institution where people go in there and they get indoctrinated instead of educated, which is the opposite of education. And I mentioned this before to you, but I actually have two different things that I want to say about this. First thing is that I had a similar experience to your guest, where I posted about the Black Lives Matter protests whilst I was in university during my master's degree, and then my university sent me an email saying, oh, we heard you was racist on your social media. And I was like, well, how was I racist? I was just saying that the Black Lives Matter movement, they do not have the right to go and vandalize statues of Churchill, and they have no right to beat people up and set buildings on fire. That's not a racist comment, right? If you want to protest, protest peacefully. Right? And then the second thing I wanted to say about this is that I actually used to work for a year as a teacher, and I used to teach politics and economics at Chelsea Academy right before I started my career as a political analyst. And the first ever video I made is that I made like a long video about Trump, and then I made another video, and my video started like becoming like gathering momentum on in school, and then the students found my videos, and then they start sharing it around, in the school. And I had a meeting with the people at school. They were like, "Look, Eunice, you cannot have a political opinion because you work in this school." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" They were like, "No, sorry, this is our policy." And I was like, "Look, there are like people like Jordan Peterson that work for Harvard University, and they're allowed to be on social media and give their opinions. Like, what makes you so special that at Chelsea Academy I cannot have my own political opinion online?" So anyway, they were like, "No, look, you have to make a decision. You either want to work here or you pursue your social media stuff." And I chose that I'm going to pursue my social media stuff. But that's the disparity there is, because I'm quite right-leaning. I feel like if I was...
Oh, really? I had no idea, Eunice. You surprised me.
Yeah, no, seriously. And yeah, I was working as a teacher for like a year now, and still to this day, I see some of my students down the road, because the Chelsea Academy is literally just down the road from where I live.
Well, I bet if you put up a video supporting Joe Biden, they wouldn't have called you into the office.
Exactly. And this is the thing. Another thing I wanted to say is that, look, as soon as I walked in the school, there was this huge pride flag. And I always thought to myself, why do we need this huge pride flag right as soon as we walk into the building? Like, what purpose does it have, And I always wanted to mention these things, because I also made videos about LGBTQ, about Trump, about, all these different things. And I do truly believe, because of my political stance, they were like, you either have to use your social media or you have to work here. And I chose, I'm going to follow my passion. But it's just crazy. Like, if I made a video saying, oh, yes, there's 25 different genders, and yeah, immigration is great, and yeah, political correctness, and, they wouldn't have said nothing. But because of the stances I took, they gave me an ultimatum. And that's just not okay at all. And we're going in the wrong direction. As your guest said, there's no more debate anymore. Everyone has to fall in line. Everyone can't question anything. You cannot question immigration. You cannot question LGBTQ. You cannot question anything that goes against the mainstream narrative. And that's wrong, and that's indoctrination. That's not education.
James, just to bring that conversation to an end then, what would you've set up Students Against Tyranny. Now, what would your message be to students who are potentially at university or going to university who are worried about all of this and are fearful? Because we hear this so often on Reasoned, that people get in touch and they say, I agree with everything you say, but I'm absolutely terrified to actually say it because I'm worried about me being marked down. Some responses to that say, well, you shouldn't give up your principles for a mark on a test paper, but then you give up career opportunities. So it's a hard one to actually decide what you're going to do about that conundrum. So what would your message be to people who are watching who say, these lads and lass speak sense, and I wish I could say it too?
Listen, I know it's difficult, right? So, from what we've started here, I've lost my university education. I'm now £60,000 in debt, and I struggle to get a job in most fields, and so I have to focus on this. And sometimes, I'm living on £400 a month. So I understand it's difficult, right? And I understand the amount you give up to speak the truth. But if you don't speak the truth, the future we're heading down is a far, far worse. It's hard to kind of saying what I want to say and putting it into words and into context. But what I'm saying is the truth is always worth it. And it doesn't matter what you give up. The future is far, far, far worse if you don't speak up than it is if you stay quiet, right? I know if you speak out now, you may lose future job prospects and future career, but if we're being real, the direction the UK is heading down, I don't think many people have a future career-wise anyway. We're most likely to be imprisoned, shoved into FEMA camps, and God knows what else they have planned for us. So all I've got to say is the future's always worth it. Students Against Tyranny exists for this sole reason, right? We provide legal representation to students who are struggling in university, are being kicked out, are being expelled. We do protests for those students as well. We've built a little community, so come join us, right? And you can join us. We're if you go on our website, you can join completely free, right? We don't charge money.
Which is what?
studentsagainsttyranny.com/join. Just join completely free. We'll get you involved. We'll get you into the group chats. And if you can as well, come down on the 14th of September. because I know all of you, right? If you're watching and you're young, I know how much you like to drink, right? So after we've done our demonstration, we go out to Norwich Town and we get absolutely hammered. So come down 14th of September, 1 p.m, Gentleman's Walk as well. That's going to be a fantastic day. We're expecting 200 people this time. So if you can't be there, please be there. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Truth's always worth it.
Absolutely. Well, James, thank you very much for giving us that walkthrough of Clive Lewis being a complete and utter rotten arse. And good luck with everything, because I agree with the values of Students Against Tyranny, and we must stand against tyranny because there's a hell of a lot of it, folks. Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.